Imagine standing on a coastline at dawn and seeing the horizon fill with ships, not merchants, not allies, an armada, black sails cutting through mist. Behind you, a city that has stood for centuries, about to burn. No warning, no declaration, no king demanding tribute, just fire, screams, and the sound of an age ending. Because around 1200 BC, the ancient world didn't slowly decline. It collapsed. And the most unsettling part is this. We still don't know exactly who brought it down. They were called the Sea Peoples. And if that sounds like just another ancient mystery, listen carefully. Because the Bronze Age world was not primitive. It was global. Trade routes stretched across the Mediterranean. Alliances bound empires together. Food crossed borders. Bronze weapons depended on imported metals. It was powerful, and it was fragile. When the Sea Peoples appeared, that fragile system shattered. Tonight, we follow the evidence. The last records written before cities fell. The inscriptions carved by survivors, and the theories historians still debate. Because the truth may not be a single cause. It may be something far more dangerous. Before the collapse, the eastern Mediterranean thrived. The Hittite Empire ruled Anatolia from its capital at Hattusa. Mycenaean kings governed palace cities in Greece, Mycenae, Pylos, Tiryns, where scribes tracked grain, weapons, and taxes on clay tablets. Levantine ports moved goods between continents. Cyprus shipped copper, the lifeblood of bronze. Tin traveled from distant regions to complete the alloy. Without copper and tin, bronze weapons disappeared. Without bronze weapons, armies weakened. This was not a scattered world. It was an interconnected machine. And machines fail suddenly. Then it stopped. Within decades, the great powers unraveled. Hattusa was burned and abandoned. Mycenaean palaces collapsed one by one. Cities along the Levantine coast were destroyed. Trade routes vanished. Bronze grew scarce. In parts of Greece, writing disappeared for centuries. Imagine that. A civilization so broken, it forgot how to record itself. And moving through that chaos was a force described with fear. People from the sea, not just raiders, entire populations, men, women, children, wagons. A migration that moved like an invasion that felt like the end of the world. The clearest account comes from Egypt, because Egypt survived long enough to record it. During the reign of Ramesses III, inscriptions describe a coalition arriving by land and sea. They had already destroyed other kingdoms. They had turned cities to ash. They were moving south. Reliefs at Medinet Habu show ships colliding, archers firing, bodies in the water. Egypt held, but barely. And Egypt was not the only voice from that time. In the ruins of a city called Ugarit, archaeologists uncovered something chilling. A letter, not mythology, not royal propaganda, a plea for survival. The king of Ugarit wrote to a neighboring ruler in desperation. Enemy ships had appeared off the coast. Cities were burning. His army was away. His defenses were thin. He begged for reinforcements. The letter was never answered. Ugarit was destroyed soon after. Its palaces collapsed, its archives buried beneath ash. The message survived. The kingdom did not. Imagine writing that letter, knowing ships were on the horizon, hoping someone would come, and realizing too late. No one was coming. So who were the Sea Peoples? Here is where the story shifts. They may not have been the original cause. They may have been the visible wave of a deeper collapse already underway. One possibility is mass migration. If famine, instability, or war struck the Aegean world, displaced populations would move. And moving populations do not knock politely. They push, they seize, they survive. That helps explain why Egyptian records list multiple groups, not one empire, but fragments in motion. Yet migration alone does not explain the near-simultaneous fall of major powers. Another pressure was climate. Evidence suggests prolonged drought struck parts of the eastern Mediterranean during this period. Drought means crop failure. Crop failure means hunger. Hunger destabilizes states. In an interconnected system, drought in one region spreads strain outward. Trade falters. Grain shipments fail. Armies weaken. The structure cracks. But drought does not launch fleets. Then there is internal rebellion. Bronze Age kingdoms were centralized palace economies, efficient in prosperity, rigid in crisis. If elites remained protected while farmers suffered, resentment would grow. Some destruction layers show signs of disorder from within. When internal stability weakens, external threats become catastrophic. But rebellion alone does not explain coordinated sea invasions. Which leads to the most unsettling explanation: system collapse. The Bronze Age was an interdependent web. Copper from Cyprus, tin from distant lands, diplomacy built on trade, chariot warfare dependent on bronze. Break one link, and stress spreads through the network. Trade weakens, weapons decline, borders strain, raids increase, trust collapses, a feedback loop. In that world, the Sea Peoples did not need to be unstoppable. They only needed to strike when everything was already unstable. Not the sole cause, the catalyst. And then comes the strangest detail. The Sea Peoples vanish. They leave destruction. They leave disruption. But no clear empire, no unified language, no capital we can identify with certainty. Some scholars connect fragments of them to the Philistines in the southern Levant. Archaeology shows cultural shifts, new pottery styles, new settlement patterns. But even that suggests fragments, not one identity, not one homeland. The Sea Peoples may not have been a single nation at all. They may have been what happens when a collapsing world throws entire populations into motion. A storm given a name. So what ended the Bronze Age? Was it the Sea Peoples? Yes, and no. They attacked. They burned cities. They accelerated destruction. But they struck a world already stretched thin. Drought had strained harvests. Palace systems had grown brittle. Trade networks were vulnerable. Alliances were fragile. The structure was unstable. And then the ships appeared, like the final wave against a cracked wall. Here is why this matters. The Bronze Age was advanced, globalized, interdependent, efficient, and that made it fragile. It did not fall because people forgot how to build. It fell because complexity amplifies stress. Once strain reaches a tipping point, collapse can happen faster than anyone expects. The Sea Peoples were the face of that collapse. But the deeper lesson is darker. No civilization is immune to systemic shock. So imagine that coastline again, the ships in the mist, the city behind you, the realization that the world you know is ending. That is what the Sea Peoples represented, not just invaders, but the moment stability failed. They came from the sea. They ended an age, and then they disappeared, leaving behind a warning carved into history. Subscribe to Immortal Kings for cinematic journeys into ancient mysteries, forgotten civilizations, and the first heroes of humanity. Because the deeper you go into the past, the more you realize history isn't what we know. History is what survived. And some stories are still waiting to be found.